Okay.
Okay, so morning or afternoon or evening, depending which part of the world you are, everybody. It's great to be here. My name is Stuart Elliott, and I've got four wonderful panel guests, and we've got Armoni also, who's joining us live. So it's going to be an interesting discussion. And the topic is, how does one listen? And listening is a skill which is assumed, but not necessarily taught, in my view. So, before we get into the meat and gravy, I'd like to get everybody to just give a quick introduction to themselves and tell us where they're coming from, and if they like, whether they're enjoying the warm or the cold weather, as we had to talk about that before. So let's start with Beverly.
Hi, Stuart, and hi to everyone here. So I'm here in Vancouver, British Columbia, and I'll start with the weather because it's been weird. We should actually be rainforest and kind of, mid-20s at the highest, but we have been in the high 30s. We are in a drought that we shouldn't be in, and there are more than 400 forest fires burning in British Columbia, and we are filled with smoke today. So I'm in a weird bit of a transition phase of, is this the rest of life here? So
Okay, great.
And I think that's a great place to start with how do you listen? So I teach yoga, and I teach also holistic wellness. I coach and I facilitate it. And my entire goal is for people to not only be able to listen to each other, but listen to themselves. So I love this topic because there are so many ways listening isn't thought of, and I can't wait to get into it. But that's me quickly for now. I'm rhythm of your life, and let's go.
Okay, so let's start. Let's go on to Joanne, who I'm just going around clockwise on my
Hello,
screen.
everybody, and thanks for having me. Weather, amazing. Unlike Beverly, I'm sorry to report, but we're just at the end of winter, I guess, but it feels more like spring. I'm on the far north coast of New South Wales in Australia, and pretty spoiled. I live in the hinterland, so I'm very blessed to be here in nature. But I work as an empowerment coach. I work with women to support them in, living their best selves and living their best lives, finding themselves amongst all the chaos of life. So I am an NLP practitioner, hypnosis practitioner, and part of my job is to listen deeply. So I'm excited about today's topic.
Hey, thank you, Joe. Or Joanne. Is it Joe or Joanne?
Oh, my official name is Joanne, but my friends call me Jo. So Stuart, everyone, all of you here are my friends. Call me Jo, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for that. And then next in line is Tim.
Hey guys, I'm coming to you live from Texas, and I'm over here a little bit north of Houston. It's been pretty warm over here in our neck of the woods. We've been dealing with 100-degree weather for the past several weeks, and talking a little bit about my history and how it would pertain to listening. I do a lot of recruitment, and so it's a lot of listening and learning what people desire in their career, and helping businesses find the right people for them. So I felt like that would be a good subject to join you on. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you. And then last, but definitely not least, Linda.
Thanks, Stuart. Good to see you guys again. I'm coming from Sydney, which is like Joanne, beautiful weather here, and Joe, sorry. And as I was saying to the guys before, I went for a walk in nature this morning, which was just magnificent. So yeah, sorry about that on the other side of the planet, guys. Don't want to rub it in. I work as an author, a coach, counselor, mentor, and I work mainly with people that have experienced trauma in their life. And I work to help them to find out who they are and what's important to them. And I also run one of the tribes in the sacred community, which is called Your Inner Oracle, which is the same sort of thing about understanding who you are as a soul being. And today's a good one for me as well, because as you know, working with people, it's really important for people to understand how they listen and, you know, listening to themselves, like Beverly was saying before as well, is a massive thing for people just to understand how they respond and how they listen. So yeah, it's going to be a good conversation today. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And for those who don't know me yet, I'm obviously Stuart Elliott's my name, but I'm coming to you from the south of China. And we have had a transition. I mean, I felt very minute change in the evening temperatures. So autumn is on its way and the cicadas have started to quieten down a little bit. They come out over here from the end of May and until the end of August. So they make a heck of a noise usually, but I like it. It's beautiful. And we have hot weather, but we have humid weather because we're in the tropics. So when I see that some part of the world has 2 inches of rain, I think that's nothing. You know, we get 6 or 8 inches sometimes in a day because, you know, it's the monsoon type climate. And I was interested in this topic because listening is a basic skill. And I think that for many, many people, they listen with the answer in mind. They don't listen to what's actually being said. They hear something and it triggers an answer, and that's all. They can't wait to get in and give an answer. And it's a big problem because we don't have communication amongst people in so many different areas. And I think it is something that we need to be taught at school, but the school curriculum is another subject for a different day. But, you know, for the first question is quite a simple one. And is listening easy? And if it's not, why not? If it is, why is it? So let's go to Jo and get her feedback first.
Yeah, so great question. Is it easy? Okay, I don't think it's easy, but it's simple. Okay, when we know how. And the reason I don't think it's easy is this is something that came to me is exactly what you said a moment ago, Stuart, is that we tend to, our brain is always on, our mind is always thinking, and we haven't trained it to just be still enough to actually hear ourselves, but also hear what, you know, in the context of, you know, with other people, speaking with other people and listening to them. We are thinking about, often it could come from a good place, you know, about how we can respond to help them. But at the same time, we're probably not really hearing what they're saying because we're thinking about what we need to respond with. So in that context, you know, it's not easy because our brains are trained to always be on, you know, on thinking. So it can be a challenge for some people, particularly if you're a chronic helper or an empath, you know, you want to be there. It comes from a good place, but often it's better to just practice hearing, just practice just being and listening without responding, and that comes back to being present, right, in any given moment. So being still and being present and putting all devices and all the other things aside so that you can fully be there and really hear that what the person is. Often they don't need help. They just want you to hear. So I think that's a really good place to start and get out of our heads and into our hearts.
Okay, well, that's good answer. And, you know, there's so much truth there. It is a skill to grow, but it is one of the things, the basic things that we are assumed to know how to do. And nobody teaches us how to grow until we find out we've got too many challenges or arguments in life and what's going on, you know. So it's a very, very important thing. So thanks for that, Jo. And what about yourself, Tim?
Yeah, so I really like what Jo said there. I do think that it does take training. It takes training for people who are selfish. I feel like maybe people that are not selfish, maybe it doesn't take as much training. It's just part of our nature. However, people that are selfish or narcissistic, they're going to sit there and think about what they want to say, what they want to interject into the conversation. They will not hear, they will not listen. And I think it's a very selfish thing to not listen. I don't know about you guys, but that's kind of my take on it. I never had trouble listening in conversations since I was a young man. I always listened. I always listened to elders. I always listened to my peers and heard what they had to say. I might not have agreed with it, but I wouldn't have jumped in out of line or said anything that maybe I shouldn't have. I feel like I just listened to the conversation. Here's my take on it, and listen and see what they have to say about it.
Okay, that's good. The other question that comes along to you with the notion of selfishness is, what if there is a lack of self-worth within the individual?
Wow.
And they find this is an opportunity to try and get some attention.
You get some attention by talking, or
by answering a point because they've got this thing and they can't wait to get it out. Is their opportunity, one of their opportunities, and it's not necessarily come from a place of selfishness.
Wow.
But maybe a lack on their side and a lack of understanding.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I like that, Stuart. Yeah, I like that. I think that could be a thing. I would think of it as like a selfish thing, but yeah, maybe it's their lack of self-worth and that's how they shine, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's something to consider from our point of view. When we were having these conversations and we think this person is doing something, and where's that behavior coming from? Right. Another incident that I experienced was when I was living in South Africa. I was working in a client's garden, and it was a young woman with a young daughter, and the daughter was running around the garden, and we were talking about some landscaping work. And then the child's probably 7 years old, and then she came up, "Mummy, mummy, mummy," and mummy's talking to the gentleman. So she tells the girl, "Wait, I'm talking to the gentleman." And the girl kept interrupting. And the mother got a little bit upset and said, "Look, wait," basically. And then the daughter just reached up and grabbed the woman's top and pulled it down and exposed everything. So I disappeared into the garden to look at things, but this child had a need to be heard.
Yeah. Wow.
And she wasn't having that satisfied. And the mother, rather than say, "Okay, do you mind if I just talk to her?" she tried to push it off a little bit. So we have to consider sometimes who it is that's trying to interject and adapt, I think.
Yeah, and we are all someone's children, and some people grow up later on in life. So maybe it's not a 7-year-old girl. Yeah. I like it. Yeah. Very, very nice. Good story.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So let's go on to Lyndall and have her point of view.
Hey, yeah, I think there's some really good points there. And like what you were saying, Stuart, too, I think, our subconscious mind is always going on, always working, always in the background. And it comes from our beliefs and our conditioning and our patterning is always impacting our subconscious mind as well. And I think what happens in a lot of situations, what we're not taught is, who are we and how do we think? And we bring those thoughts and those patterns into our conversations. So you'll find sometimes when you're listening to somebody that you're thinking about, what's the problem, or what do they want from me, or what do I need to fix, or how do I need to help, or depending on where you're at. And like you were saying, Stuart, depending on what you've got in your life and your needs and how you've been brought up, you're bringing into how you listen based on what your belief system and your conditioning and patterning. So yes, is it easy to listen? I think it is if you understand more about yourself and who you are and how you listen. I think that's the driver. But yeah, you're right. Like, we're not taught this stuff at school. It's the same thing as like giving and receiving. We're not taught how to give freely without expectations. We're not taught how to receive freely without expectations. It's the same way. We're not taught how to listen and how to speak, both respectfully. So it is a skill, and it's a skill that I hope is going to become more important as we move on, especially with technology coming in and taking away a lot of communication. And I would hate to think that we lose that skill set, because it's something that's really important to connecting with ourselves and others.
Yeah, and it's, it's so true. And I think one of the things that would be very useful for us as individuals when we're in the listening mode is, if we do have something that we need to say, consider how the other person may judge our interruption or whatever. And, just respect them and let them finish, and wonder where they're, consider where they're coming from, so they get the opportunity to shine as well. And it is sometimes a very delicate balance in that, because what you have to say is so important. And yet, if you interject, you miss what could be even more important, but you don't see that. So it's not always an easy thing, is it?
It's holding space too, isn't it, for them? Allowing them to express who they are.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks then. So Beverly.
Hi. I like all of this. Again, every one of these discussions is so good. As far as the question, is listening easy? As Joe said, it's not really about easy, maybe simplicity. I have a slightly different take. I think it just, everything depends. Everything depends. You could say yes, you could say no. Listening can be easy. Is it easy? Maybe not in the context of where we are in the world right now. Something Lyndall said about the giving and receiving, hearing and listening to somebody is giving or is receiving, but the giver has to, I think part of the problem is the giver doesn't consider the listener. As much as listening is a skill that's being depleted, which is why it's not easy, because we're in a fast pace, everybody's feeling so left out. They're in a rush to have something come out of their mouth that matters, have somebody hear them, because there's so much noise. But the problem also comes from the people speaking. Whoever is speaking doesn't even ask if somebody's ready half the time to hear. I know people will be in another room and a conversation starts. And I'm like, I'm not even there to hear you. I can't hear you. So why are you having an entire conversation with me until I'm present? And even if somebody's in the same room, if it's at work, if it's in a social environment, any environment, I think it behooves all of us to, before we open our mouth, especially if we feel what we have to say is important, that we ask if that person is ready to receive and hear us. Imagine they've had a bad day. Imagine they're in a really stressful place, and then you want to talk about whatever is important to you, and their mind is somewhere else. And then, this is where problems start. It's like, well, you don't want to hear me. You don't want to listen to me, but they can't. They're unable, but we haven't asked if they're able. So I think this is why it can't be easy, because there's so many, as you've all pointed out, there's so many skill sets that we're not taught anymore. There's all these places where we are incapable because we haven't created the skill set. Like, it doesn't require just my ears to hear you. If I see your face, you can be saying, oh yeah, I'm so happy. But if I look at your face and go, okay, this person isn't happy, but they're trying to tell everybody they're happy, but all I have to do is see their eyes. And if I'm listening, not just with my ears, if I'm listening to the inflection, yes, but listening to their body language, yeah, I'm so happy. Or listening to their eyes, listening to the sound of their voice. Is it stressed? Is it shaking when they're saying something? Is there something more being said? Not the words themselves, but the spaces in between the words, the vibration of what's going on. Even our skin feels vibration. And if everything from a voice is sound and it's vibration, we should be able to feel with our skin even what's being said. So this is why I can't say that it's an easy thing. It could possibly become more simplified, but we have to start training people in the skill sets to reach that place of understanding, of listening. So that's.
Yeah, you've made some very good points. And I think, quite often, let's just take a married couple where, traditionally the woman's at home with the children or whatever, and the guy, is at work and he comes home and he's had a bad day. So he can't wait to get home to offload. And he walks in, he doesn't consider what his wife's been through the whole day with the children. And he just offloads. And she's not ready to hear that. She's got her own drama she wants to share. But he's being very, selfish by offloading without considering that other person. So that's a very, very important point. The other thing I think is important is sometimes as the speaker, we want to tell war and peace. We turn it over before we give anyone another chance to talk. And that's something we've got to rein in as well, because sometimes, we just talk because we're insecure. But we're not given the opportunity. Go on.
I was just going to say, I love that point, because that is a listening skill in and of itself while you're speaking. To be able to see that somebody is just like, okay, I'm at the point of done. I can't listen.
Yeah.
So,
and even hear yourself going on and on. Oops.
Just mute now, shall I?
Yeah. And here's another question that I love to ask people when I'm in conversations with them. I ask them, what do you use to listen with? And most people look at me as I'm stupid. What are you talking about? My ears. And then a few people, they come along and they say, well, I can read the body language, the facial expressions or whatever. But the real answer is you listen with your whole body. There's not one part of it, it's every part of it, because we're energetic beings. And if we understand that and we're listening to everything with our whole body, then we can have a much more meaningful conversation, can't we? So it's an interesting thing. Throw it out to a few people when you're having conversations with them and see what they say. You might get some strange looks. So what is the advantage of being an effective listener, if you think of it, after what we've just discussed? What is the advantage? Or is there one? So let's start with Lyndall.
Oops, wasn't ready for that.
That's good.
Had to find the unmute button quickly. All good. Advantages. Well, I mean, there's many, but reciprocity. Let's start with reciprocity, of having that connection between two people and a meaningful interaction, being able to hold space for someone else, being able to support somebody else in a way that they know how. I love what you said too before, Stuart, about, this is a little bit off track, but about what you were saying about how sometimes we ramble about certain things. And I've noticed too that I find that men and women speak very differently as well. Like women need to provide background information about things, whereas men are more to the point. What's the point? What's the problem? And I found that if you put a bit of context up front first with that, it usually helps the situation. Like if I'm speaking to my partner, I'll say to him, I do have a point, but can I give you some background information first? And he'll say, okay, no worries. And he'll let me go on with my little story. So I just wanted to add that in. But sorry, back to the question. I think there's many advantages, and we can all look at things differently, but any connection, any interaction is about two sides. So if you want to have a meaningful conversation with someone, and we did have a talk about this a month ago, if you do want to have a meaningful conversation, there has to be that reciprocity. There has to be that give and take. There has to be, like Beverly was saying before, there has to be both sides. And I think most people are looking for that connection with others. They want to have something that's meaningful, not something that is shallow. So that's what I would say would be, I mean, there's many, but that's what I would say be the main advantage.
Yeah, and that word connection is very important, I think. It's a very, very powerful word, which I don't think a lot of people really understand the depth of it and the true meaning of it. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, like you said before, when we speak, we listen with our bodies. I think there's a soul component to that as well. Like our interactions of how we connect with someone is on a soul level as well, I find.
Yeah, because I mean, quite often what we're saying verbally is not in alignment with what really we're trying to convey. And, you know, there's a good example of that. I had a discussion with somebody on a training course, and we were in a breakout room. And we were talking about benign attention. And to me, benign just means it's nothing, you know, it's there. It's just, you're not putting any connection to it. But to this lady, there was something wrong with the word benign. She was closing down. You could see that, you know, not dramatically, but you could feel the energy closing down and negativity coming out. So we had a discussion, and I asked her, you know, what is her job? And she turns out she works in a terminal cancer facility. She's a caregiver to people who are terminally ill with cancer. And her connection to the word, her energy with the word benign is cancer, tumors, suffering. Yeah. And there's no wonder that she wasn't on the same page as us. But if I hadn't have felt that change, I would never have been able to find out a different word. And what I did is I got the thesaurus out and just fired off a few synonyms, and all of a sudden, bing, there's one that hit her, and it was beautiful. The change in her was dramatic. And that's why we need to listen with just more than our ears, because there's so much more going on.
Yeah, it's conscious.
So it's very, very interesting. Yeah. So it is that soul connection, and that is so important between people. And sometimes you can have that without even saying a word. You're still listening, you're still understanding, but you're connected at different levels. So thanks for bringing that up. So Tim.
Yes, sir. Let me unmute here. Yeah, I think you know, just being able to listen, it just brings about more of a colorful existence. It makes you more of a, it's just more of a full life. It's a more colorful you. You know, that I think that's the benefit of it. I think it's you know, of course the connection, but it's just it's the joy that you receive after you've left the conversation and that connection. It sticks with you. You know, if you have a good conversation and both parties are listening, you think about it later on. It's a memory. It becomes something more than just the one communication that you had. It's now like an engraved memory for both parties. Like, I've just, you know, over these past few years, while I'm interviewing people, I've really became more appreciative of each conversation, of each interview. I can pull them up and I just say, wow, you know, I learned about this person, and you think about them later on. And you know, you wonder, how did it all turn out? You know, you start, you know, it's like a story that we have now, and that comes from great listening. You know, if you're not listening to somebody, then, you know, 30 minutes from then, you're not thinking about it, right? I mean, it's gone away, and it's not as meaningful, right?
And I love the way you brought in the colorful part.
Yeah,
that's so beautiful. So it's a beautiful way of bringing it, because it does add that vibrancy to life, doesn't it?
yeah, it's more beautiful memories that we have because of it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
So Beverly.
Okay, this is, of course, there's no one advantage. There are so many. I'll start with the form that we've been talking about, listening to another person and how we hear them. A couple of stories I have. One, in my 20s, I was working with victim services, and somebody called our line. We were actually meant to support people going through court, but they thought it was a crisis intervention line. I ended up talking to a man who was suicidal for 45 minutes. There was nobody else in the room. Meanwhile, I was throwing stuff into the hall, trying to get the attention of the police that were working on the other side of the building. And I was deeply in tune with this man. I heard everything. I heard what he wasn't saying so that I was able to ask him questions and pull stuff from him that he wasn't sharing, but figure out what it was. So by the time I got the attention of somebody, I knew everything about this man. I knew him deeply and intimately, everything but his name. I knew everything going on for him. I knew his wife had died. I knew what was, what was hurting him, what wasn't. But as soon as a cop walked in, I had to get them the information. So I was listening, but I was distracted as well by trying to pass on this information. And he knew, immediately he knew, and he hung up the phone. And I think I'm sharing that simply as the example of what the difference is. When we share, somebody will give us their all. We can go to a place with them that we would never get to if we're busy watching who's what, and we've all been there, I'm sure, having coffee with somebody in a coffee shop, and you're trying to tell somebody something important, and meanwhile they're like, oh, did you see that? Oh, look at that baby. Look at that dog. Isn't that a cute dog? As you're trying to share something of deep value and importance to you. So what we come out with when we listen is connection, community. We gain knowledge. We find the similarities between ourselves. We become more effective if we're in businesses. I mean, that's where Tim is working with, in a business environment, become more effective leaders, or running departments. We can help other people immensely. But the other side of it, I think that we haven't really touched on, but I think behooves us to really look at, is the fact that when we listen to ourselves, learn to listen to ourselves, which we are not taught to do, we can figure things out much quicker. We know when we are getting sick. My sister just passed away in April from cancer. She didn't go into a hospital till March. And she was incredibly sick. It was all through her body, but she didn't want to listen. She just, is on that surface, the same as when we're just talking very generally to somebody. We don't listen to nature. Nature tells us when stuff is out of whack, but we prefer not to hear it. We don't want to listen to it because we prefer the story that we have in our heads. Same as, again, talking to somebody else. We prefer the story that we're waiting to share, the story that we want to have about what's going on. So the skill of listening to another, I think if we teach it, ends up trickling out into all other levels of our being, into our energy, into our connection outside ourselves, inside of ourselves, to a bigger, more expansive view of the world. So the advantages, I think, are endless, absolutely endless. But we have to start with training the very basic skills as if we were all in kindergarten.
Thanks for that, Jo. And I'd just like to welcome CMK, and we're talking about what are the advantage, or what is the advantage of being an effective listener? So if you've got anything, a question, just put it in the chat, or if you'd like to speak, just raise your hand and we can include you. So yeah, I mean, it is something that we need to include from a very, very young age, but also I think listening to ourselves is very important. I mean, we get a lot of intuitive messages, shall we say. You just know. I mean, I'll give you a great example of this. And, I've done it many times and said, okay, yeah, I'll be careful type thing. I was doing landscaping in South Africa, and I had a 4x4. And on the back of the 4x4, we had a big trailer full of gravel. And I was going to unhitch the trailer, and I heard this voice in my head saying, Stuart, be careful. And I was in a bit of a rush. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll be careful. But I knew what I should have done, support the back of it, but I didn't bother. So I'm taking more time, and I had my hands on the tow hitch. And as I just loosened it, it flipped up, and I got these wheel studs on the back door, where the spare wheels carried, and it smashed my hand against the back of the wheel studs. And I've got about 6 inches of skin hanging off my hand, all the bones in the back of it, my tendons were showing. I didn't listen. So life said, Stuart, here's a lesson for you, wakey, wakey, listen to yourself as well as everyone else. So it's very important that we know what you mentioned. So thank you for that. And Jo, what do you have to add?
I absolutely love what everybody said. I totally 100% agree with it. And also, what happens when we don't listen, Stuart. And I was going to tap on that piece about, listening to ourselves, our intuition, tapping into that area, and the potential that has to create a magnificent life, right? And, not have to go down the pain path, and not experience, the pain that you went through there, Stuart, to get to get to where we're going. Message, but also because that would have probably put you back, how many paces in life, in, your next steps. But divine breadcrumbs, right? Following those divine breadcrumbs within and listening, and that becomes a practice. And as Beverly alluded to, skills that we need to cultivate in order to hear those messages, and in stillness. So it's so important. There's so many advantages in listening, and in the context of our work as well. I think that to be able to guide people to what they need, instead of us being telling them what they need, as most people would want to do because they want to help. But we need to have good listening skills. We need to listen to the words, words, as you said, have power, and the linguistics of what I've been trained in is actually a clue to support someone even deeper, and that deep connection to self, and listening to what they're saying can really help them navigate their outcomes a lot more effectively as well. So all of what you said is amazing. And a bird just smashed into my window there. What's he want to listen to? I just think that it's so important to listen to your inner guidance for getting what you deserve in life, getting what you want in life. Sorry, this bird is really smashing itself outside my window. I don't know whether you heard that, but I hope it's okay. Yeah.
Maybe it's saying you need to help it. I mean, I talking to the bird smashing windows in South Africa, there was a particular dove that always did that to windows. You come home and there's an outline of the dove, the oil of the feathers on the window. It was the only bird that did that regularly. I think there's something wrong with that particular variety of dove.
Yeah.
But it's got a message to tell you.
Yeah, so, he's like, come and tell them this. He looks all right.
You made some great points, and I think there's something worth exploring from what you said rather than go to the next question. And that is, what is it about people that makes them listen to only negative things from inside themselves?
Is that a question to me?
Yeah, you can start and then we can go around. Yeah.
What is it about people who only listen to the negative? I think it's they're conditioned, they're conditioned, or their programming, and what they're being conditioned. Personally, I believe that, what you've been conditioned through out your childhood, but also what's carried through from their parents and their ancestors, it's generational. So we tend to just keep thinking the same way as we have been trained to think through, what we see, what we hear, what we feel in our past, and take those same behaviors on. So if you've grown up in a family that has had a lot of negative implications or intention, like that's how it's always been, and people think negatively, you're going to take on that negative behavior, that negative thinking, of a way of thinking. So that's something, and when you're aware of that, it's easy to break. Okay, I think awareness is the first thing for breaking any habit or behavior. So just having that understanding of your own past, of your own family situation, even in schools, like what we're taught in school and what we've been programmed to believe, comes back to our beliefs, right? And taking those beliefs of other people on can cause us to be thinking that way. And that is definitely a huge area to explore and work with. There's power in that, a lot of power in that, you know, and look at, well, how did my parents think? How did their parents think? And then maybe break that, a time to break that cycle, opportunity to break the cycle and start thinking more empowering, more positive. Yeah, looking at the beliefs. Yeah.
It's a big question, isn't it? It doesn't sound so much, but it is a very, very, very big question, because it goes back so far in our life. And you know, one of the things that I always think about this is, do people know that?
Yeah.
Do they realize that they're connected to this world of negativity, or is this just their normal because of the conditioning and everything else? So bringing the awareness factor in is a big thing, but we've got to be open to being aware, haven't we?
Absolutely. And I think it's through these discussions that we can help people, you know, open that doorway.
Tim, do you have anything to add?
Well, I think you're head on with it, you know, just self-awareness and just always trying to be in your best awareness, because, you know, like Joe said, you know, it's like once you finally figure it out, you know, that, you know, you start feeling this certain way. Well, what is that from? Well, maybe it's my environment. Maybe it's, you know, these subconscious things. And you start realizing, you know, what's going on and how powerful the subconscious is if you just give up all your power to it. But once you start realizing how much we run on the subconscious programming, and you become more self-aware, you can start battling, you know, you can really start battling these things and start living a more positive life. And you know, that's how it's done. That's how I did it. You know, because I didn't come from a great environment, upbringing, but you just start seeing these things, these repeating patterns, and you just stop them. You start cutting these things out and just putting up walls and building a more positive life and bringing more positive people into your circle and people that have the ability to listen, the people that are like-minded, the people that have done the self-awareness practice and beating the subconscious programming. That's, you know, that's how I was able to break free and find a happier life.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes it's difficult because we tend to create a circle of friends or influence, if you like, of people who have the same feelings. So if we've got a positive outlook, we look for positive people. But if we have a negative outlook, we attract negative people. So it's, you know, it's very challenging. And sometimes I think that we need that jolt to help us break free and say, hey, this is not right. This is not for me. I need to change or do something. And it can be quite traumatic sometimes for us to make that change. So it's good that you brought that up. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's traumatic, you know, if all your friends are negative and all your family, you know, the people that you're close to are in this other space. It is traumatic to go through that kind of breakup, if you will, and go hunt down new friends. And the older you get, the harder it can be to find new friends. And, you know, but, you know, you just got to get out there.
Yeah. And sometimes we're led to believe that friends should be with us for life.
Yeah.
But, you know, we've got to look at the friendship. Is it serving us? And one of the other challenges, and it's much bigger, well, sometimes in a way it's much bigger, is family. They can be the biggest negative influence on us. And how do we just separate ourselves from that? I mean, that's a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah. 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 But you just gotta do what you can and build a new family.
Yeah.
Build the next
Or,
generation.
lessen the sort of time together. It's like my brother and I, if we get together for a long time, we're like cats and dogs fighting. But we've worked out that if we keep away from each other, we just have occasional conversations. It's okay. We've got a good relationship.
Yeah, some boundaries.
Yeah, so we've got to find that ways to create that. So thank you. So Lyndall, do you have something you'd like to add?
Yeah, I like everything that you guys have said is so true. And a lot of my work is about knowing yourself. Like, my favorite quote is from Aristotle, which is knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And it is so true. And if you take the time to understand what your conditioning and patterning is, and yes, it comes from your family, it can come from religion, it can come from gender, it can come from so many different aspects in your life. But until you take that time to understand who you are, and is it yours? It mightn't even be yours. It's stuff that, a lot of it is stuff that is brought down from generation. And you just take it on as a truth, and it's not yours at all. And it's such a massive thing. And I think when we start to understand that, we do understand more, like Tim was saying, about what our subconscious mind is doing. And then we start to think about things like, how do we listen to people? And it opens up that other aspect of things. And what you were saying before, Stuart, is correct. Like, people look at things from a negative perspective, like what everyone has said, based on, their belief system. And their belief systems come directly from their conditioning, cultural conditioning, family patterning, their religion, their gender, where they're brought up, their socioeconomic status. Combination of all these things create a person of what they think they are today. I mean, you ask any person, who are you? And probably the first thing that they'll say to you is, I work as blah, 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 right? But who are you? That's the question. And it's knowing that. And to be able to listen from a space of authenticity, you have to be able to know who you are. That's just my take.
Yeah, and what you're saying is basically is the ego, isn't it? We've got to leave that ego behind. And so many people only think or know of themselves as their job. I'm a CEO, I am this, I am that. And that word am is a big, big thing. And once they leave that job, either through retirement or for whatever reason, they're lost. They've got no idea, who am I?
That's it.
And that's a big, big challenge for people.
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing that up.
Mm-hmm.
And Beverly.
Hi. So negative thinking, is that the question? Stinking thinking.
Whatever comes to mind.
There's so much with this. I think the conversation you and Tim just had about it, that I never get the quote quite right. The Anne Irwin quote. The time came when it was so painful to remain. Does anybody know the quote? In a bud. I can't think. It's basically the idea that it was more painful to stay as we were than to change into what you needed to be. And this whole concept of negative thinking, look around us, everything is negative. You listen to the weather, nature's attacking us. We're not under attack by nature. In fact, nature's under attack from us, probably we're not from her. She just happens to be showing the disease of what the attack has been. But everything comes with negative. And this is the selling technique. You are not good enough. So you need this. You are not. So everything that bombards us is in the negative. And we're taught that we get more attention when we talk about the negative, what's wrong with us, what's happened to us. More attention is given than the person who's going, yeah, everything's great. I'm actually feeling really good. Nobody's going, oh my God, well, how did you get there? How did that happen? There's not the same excitement to that. And for me, that I will say, just to add a different flavor, because I absolutely find something to resonate with in each and one of these ideas that everyone has shared. So I'll frame it in this. We our majority, if you walk down the street, can look functioning in a survival mode. I don't even have to know somebody to know this is my way of listening. I listen to a body when I see it. I know who's in a survival mode because their shoulders are in, they're here, their head's forward. Well, how many people work on a computer here? Your head's going to do this. Your chairs are built. Chairs are one of the worst things that we could ever own. One of my teachers, Bernie Clark, said, you want to get to your enemies, give them your couches and chairs. Pass them on, sit on the floor, sit on cushions, because our bodies are more upright. As soon as we descend, pressure is put on things, and the only piece of the brain that really is working is the reptile brain, and it puts us in a survival mode. So your ears are being strained, the nerves around your ears are being strained. So what are you doing? You're searching for what's going to attack you in this place. You just need to know that you're okay, and you can't hear everything because there's pressure on the nerves. As soon as you come up and open, you can hear everything better, you can see everything better. So you're already moving in a survival response. And because you can hear better and you're moving into that piece of the brain that deals with language, you can actually hear what's being said rather than what you think is being said to you. The thing that you think is there to attack who you are, the thing that you think is denigrating you, putting you down, judging you for everything that you are. We create in our mind all the judgments because we're waiting for that attack. We are so sure it's there. And yes, it's our childhoods that put us into that place. It's the work we do. It's the life we lead. It's what we're surrounded by. It's the messaging that's dumped on us by social media all day long. But there's simple things. If you can get people to at least come up and inhabit their bodies as if they're worthwhile, already you're creating a shift. And as soon as they're there, they can breathe better. They can look at somebody easier because their eyes are more open. They're more in tune with here. They're not looking down. They're looking up. They can see you. They can assess that nobody's about to attack them. They can feel the care that comes from another. And if we all did that, if, I fall into that trap sometimes, but I can catch myself quickly because I've trained myself to catch it. And when you catch it, this is the other thing we're not really good at. When you catch it, it's like, oh, sorry, I wasn't actually listening because I was so busy thinking about what I thought you were saying or what I believed you said. That's where checking in helps, or admitting that I wandered off because I was so busy thinking about what I wanted to say. You can't do it from a place that you're in survival mode because it's all about you. It has to be about you. If you think you're trying to survive, it has to be about you. But if you come out of it, you realize it doesn't always have to be about you, that it's only about you the 10% of the time that it really needs to be. And the rest can be a much more community-oriented experience. So every single one of these pieces is so important. What Tim shared, what Lyndall shared, what Joe shared, what you've been sharing in your stories, it's also important. And we have to take it all and turn it into this wonderful stone soup of understanding, and really kind of hopefully with that, each of us take our piece and go out there, which I think, and I hope we're all doing, go out there and try and offer it out and see if somebody grabs on, like the bird outside the window, hopefully takes that food and goes, okay, I'll stop bashing my head into the window. And instead I'll fly free of all of this.
Thanks, Beverly. And I had to mute myself because my two children have moved from the lounge into the other room and they're banging away there. So they're having some fun. But I'd like to ask CMK if they've got any questions, if they'd like to unmute and ask anything, and give a quick opportunity because time is going and we've been talking for a while now. Otherwise, if you'd like to put it in the chat, you can do so and then we can quickly answer. And we are 5 minutes away from the official end. So I'd like to just give you all an opportunity to tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you've got to offer, if you can do it as briefly as possible. And maybe just name one listening trap that you can you can think of at the same time. Just one, because there's so many listening traps as we discussed, and we've come a long way, but it's been a beautiful discussion. And let's start with Lyndall.
Okay, one listening trap. I think probably one that's quite that happens quite a bit is needing to fill the space. So needing to respond, not allowing to sit with someone and just allowing them to not say anything, to take their time to say what they need to say, having to react, having to respond, having to fill that space. So like if someone's sharing something very important with you, like just hold space for them and allow them to say things in their own time. Because sometimes we don't need to say anything. We just need to be there for someone. We need to hold their hand. We need to listen to them without fixing it, without trying to solve it, without trying to do anything. We just need to be there for them. So that would be one of my traps that people tend to get caught on. 2 seconds about me. I suppose you can contact me if you wanted to work with me. I offer courses, mentoring, on my website, which is steppingintome.com.au. I also run Your Inner Oracle, which is part of the Sacred You community. That's actually up on this Wednesday night. So it'll be 7:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time this Thursday. And we're going to be talking about unity. So I think that's another interesting topic that we'll be talking about. So if you want, come and join us. It'll be great. And yeah, thank you. It's been amazing chatting with everyone as always. So thanks, Stuart.
Thanks so much, Lyndall. And Sophie's put some of the information in the chat, so that's great. What about Joe?
Yes. Okay, one listening trap that I see a lot, and particularly in my family, is the need to be right. The need to be right. Like, can we just like let it go? Where there's no right. It's just opinions, and it just fascinates me actually. So I have to giggle when it comes up, and I tend to remove myself from those conversations. But yeah, but I'd love to offer I guess a practice that you can take away and just start using, because it does take time, it does take practice, and just start by perhaps listening in nature, listening to sounds, listening to noises, listening to the leaves, listening to the trees, listening to like nature before you start listening to people, because that's a really good teacher for us to be able to connect with ourselves at the same time through deep listening and deep connection with nature. So start there. But if it's too hard to listen with your body, which seems quite a lot of overwhelming, just listen with your heart, right? Let's just center and listen, open your heart and just listen. And do it as a daily practice, okay? It's a daily practice, not just once. But yeah, you can find me. All the links will be in below, and I have a few programs, and finding you time and empowering you, and also run a tribe in the Sacred You community called Finding You. Empowering you to live your best life. And I'd love you to come and join us. We're going to be doing a practice this Wednesday on it's a listening practice, a deep journaling practice, and it's a non-judgmental process that I teach, and it's going to be fun. So come and join us if you're inclined to want to know more.
Okay, thanks so much, Joe. Quickly go to Tim, because we are running out of time. So Tim.
Well, it's been a pleasure visiting with you guys. I think everybody had some great points here today, very helpful points. Listening traps. One that I'm running into quite a bit is just people that want to control the conversation. Failure to let others talk, or talk at their own pace, more peaceful conversation. Just constantly interrupting, or just want to talk over you. they don't let you say your piece. And so that's a common trap that I've seen. And it's just, I let people talk as much as they want to, and I sit there and listen, but it's sometimes the reciprocation, I find it pretty disturbing to me. So pleasure to network with you guys today. And if you would like to connect with me, I would love to help any business owners or hiring managers, help them find the right talent for their organization, or to help you design. I love to help businesses design. So you check us out at thirdpartypeople.com. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, my children are getting very noisy. So thank you so much, Tim. And Beverly, as quickly as you can, because we are past the hour and Sophia still needs to come on and wrap up for us. So
I like that. Lessons in listening to children. Really quickly, traps to listening, since a lot of what I would say has been covered, I will just add this. One of the traps, I think, is us as listeners being unwilling to admit to our fallibility as listeners, and admitting that we didn't hear something, or admitting that we don't understand what somebody has said or what's out there, I think is the quickest doorway into actually hearing properly. If we can stop somebody and ask them to clarify, or if we can wait and then ask after, I think we would all be far better off. Admit that we don't know everything, admit when we don't understand, rather than try to be everything. And as far as myself, I will quickly say you can find me in Rhythm of Your Life or oceanbreathyoga.com. I have a number of programs, but I will say, because of all the talks I've been on this month have had to do with communication, conversation, listening. Anyone who's listening to any of these podcasts or hearing them later, if they contact me, they can fill out a form on my page. I do have a program where I teach people proper communication, how to inhabit their bodies, how to listen, how to speak, to be heard, how to breathe, to be able to speak and be non-reactionary within that. So anyone who's listening, if they tell me that they've listened to one of these podcasts, I'll give them 10% off that program and work with them, because I think it's really hugely important. So thank you. And I love everything you all said.
It's been an honor to be a host and hear such beautiful wisdom from everybody. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming on. And I have a show on Sacred You, Break Through the BS Barriers. It's on Thursdays at 9 a.m. Perth time, which is 9 p.m. Eastern time in the US. So if you'd like to join, I'd love to hear, and we can talk more about these types of traps that we create for ourselves. So Sophia, do you have anything to say?
Oh, Stuart, I always have something to say, especially for an absolutely wonderful panel discussion on something that I need to listen to, because I have to admit that with the age of technology, I've not lost, I've let go of the skills and the art of listening, because I'm very easy tempted by these things and everything else. And I'm just going to wrap up very quickly too, because you've got children. We've got four-legged children here that are getting very hungry. Thank you, Stuart, for being a wonderful facilitator. It's been, like I said, it's been great. We have had people listening in. Hello to Ali. Sorry, I didn't get your messages up in time, and now I've missed them. And thank you to Cynthia, who's joined us. Thank you for Trina, who's been sitting in the background helping with the tech. And to all our beautiful facilitators, come and join us in 2 days' time. We've got another panel. Click on the links in the comments. Our next panel is talking about listening. This is Are the Voices in Your Head Friend or Foe? That's in 2 days' time. Lots of panels coming up, and there's more information about Sacred You in the comments underneath all these videos. I won't go into it all now, but just thank you. Thank you ever so much, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, well, it's my pleasure, and I'm honored to have such wonderful people coming. So thank you so much, and to everyone who's